The wrong door changed everything. Armin Qureshi had been running on fumes for days, his vision blurring from sleepless nights and the kind of exhaustion that settles deep in the bones. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before him, filled with a sterile smell of antiseptic and quiet desperation. His little daughter, Meher, lay 2 floors below, her small body hooked to machines that beeped with cold indifference. The doctors had used words he barely understood, but one thing was clear. Without immediate treatment, she wouldn't make it. Clutching a crumpled prescription in his trembling hands, Armin rushed through the hallway, searching for a doctor who might give him hope or at least more time. His worn-out shoes squeaked against the polished floor as his mind replayed the same haunting question. How was a man who could barely afford rent supposed to save his child's life? He turned a corner too quickly, his thoughts clouding his direction, and pushed open the nearest hospital room door, without checking the number. Inside, sunlight poured gently through the tall window, casting a golden glow across the quiet room. It felt different from the chaos outside, calm, almost peaceful. On the bed lay an elderly woman, her frail figure partially hidden beneath white sheets, her silver hair spread softly across a pillow. Machines surrounded her, but unlike the frantic urgency in Meher's ward, these hummed quietly, as if even they respected the stillness of the moment. Armin froze, realizing his mistake. He stepped back slightly, ready to leave, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the stillness, or the way the woman's eyes slowly opened, locking onto his with surprising clarity. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world outside seemed to fade, before the story unfolds further. If you believe that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Stories. Your support helps these stories reach hearts that need them most. Armin cleared his throat awkwardly, murmuring an apology, but the woman's gaze softened, as though she had been waiting for someone, not specifically him, but anyone who wasn't there out of obligation or routine. Her eyes carried a quiet loneliness that Armin recognized instantly, because he carried the same emptiness within himself. Instead of leaving, he found himself stepping closer. He didn't know why. Maybe because for the first time in days, someone was looking at him not as a burden, not as a desperate father begging for help, but simply as a human being. He sat down on the chair beside her bed, his hands still shaking slightly. Words came out before he could stop them, spilling the weight he had been carrying. He spoke about Meher, about her laughter that used to fill their tiny home, about the night she would fall asleep holding his finger, trusting him completely. His voice cracked as he admitted he didn't know how to save her. The woman listened in silence, her expression unreadable yet deeply attentive. Tears gathered in her eyes, not out of pity, but something deeper, understanding, perhaps even regret. Hours seemed to pass in that quiet room as Armin spoke and spoke, releasing emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel. For a brief moment, the crushing pressure lifted. He wasn't alone in his fear anymore. When he finally realized how long he had stayed, panic returned. He stood up abruptly, apologizing again, ashamed of burdening a stranger with his pain. He promised he would leave immediately, but as he turned to go, the woman's fragile hand moved slightly, signaling him to wait. Her voice, when it came, was faint but steady. She asked him to come back later. Armin hesitated. Life had taught him not to expect anything from anyone, especially not miracles. Yet something in her tone felt genuine, almost urgent. He nodded, unsure what he was agreeing to, and left the room. Back in the harsh reality of the hospital corridor, everything felt heavier again. He returned to Meher's bedside, watching her chest rise and fall weakly. He whispered promises he wasn't sure he could keep, brushing her hair gently as tears slipped down his face. The days stretched painfully slow. By evening, desperation pushed him back toward that quiet room. He didn't know what he expected, maybe nothing, but hope has a strange way of growing even in the darkest places. When he entered again, the room felt different. There were more people now, well-dressed individuals speaking in hushed tones, their presence carrying authority. The elderly woman lay as before, but her eyes immediately found Armin. One of the men stepped forward, studying Armin with curiosity. It was then that Armin realized something was not ordinary about the situation. The man introduced himself as a legal advisor, his tone polite but measured. He explained that the woman on the bed was not just any patient. Her name was Zareen Ashford, a reclusive billionaire known to very few outside elite circles. She had spent years building an empire, yet in her final days, she had no family by her side, no one who truly knew her. Armin felt a chill run through him. He glanced at the fragile woman, struggling to connect the image before him with the word billionaire. The advisor continued, explaining that earlier that day, Zareen had made an unusual request. She wanted to speak to the man who had entered her room by mistake. She had listened to his story and made a decision, one that no one in the room had expected. Armin's heart pounded loudly in his chest. Zareen's weak voice filled the silence as she confirmed herself. She said she had spent a lifetime surrounded by wealth, but starved of real human connection. People came to her for business, for gain, for advantage, but never with the raw honesty Armin had shown. She had seen something in him that money couldn't buy. And so, with what little time she had left, she decided to use her fortune for something meaningful. The advisor handed Armin a document, his hands trembling as he took it. It outlined a trust fund, one that would fully cover Meher's medical treatment, not just now, but for years to come. Beyond that, it included financial security for Armin, ensuring he would never again face the helplessness he felt today. Armin couldn't breathe. His vision blurred as the words sank in. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. But Zareen's eyes held no doubt, no hesitation, only peace. Tears streamed down Armin's face as he dropped to his knees beside her bed, unable to find words strong enough to express what he felt. Gratitude, disbelief, overwhelming relief, all crashing together. He tried to speak, but his voice failed him. Zareen simply smiled faintly, as if she had finally found something she had been searching for her entire life. In the days that followed, everything changed. Meher received the best medical care available. Slowly, painfully, she began to recover. Her laughter returned. Fragile at first, then stronger with each passing day. The hospital that once felt like a place of despair transformed into a place of miracles. Armin stayed by her side through it all, never forgetting the moment that had set everything in motion. The wrong door, the quiet room, the stranger who had seen his pain and chosen to act. Zareen passed away peacefully not long after. But her legacy lived on, not just in wealth, but in the lives she had touched in her final act of kindness. Armin visited her grave months later, holding Meher's small hand in his. The sun shone brightly overhead, a stark contrast to the darkness he once lived in. He whispered a quiet promise to honor her memory, to raise Meher with the same compassion that had saved them. Because sometimes, life doesn't change through grand plans or perfect timing. Sometimes, it changes because of a mistake. Because a tired, desperate father opened the wrong door and found a miracle waiting on the other side. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't scroll away. Take a moment to share, and comment. It helps spread stories of hope and reminds others that kindness still exists in this world. Before we end, tell us in the comments, have you ever experienced a moment where life changed unexpectedly? And remember, even in your darkest moments, the right door might be waiting where you least expect it.